The Awakening by L.V. Lane. This is a recommendation from Nat at Trigger Warning Romance. She recommended this to me, I can't even tell you how long ago. It's been on my e-reader for months, and I just decided to go with it and read something and kind of get it off that backlog of to-do list. I'm thrilled that I did. I knew going into this that it was a Cinderella-inspired Omega-verse story. What I wasn't expecting was the sci-fi element to this world. It doesn't feel paranormal in the magic aspect of Shifters. There's a virus, there are planets, there's war. It feels more sci-fi than paranormal. Like with so many Omegaverse stories, this one has intimacy kind of woven into the fabric of their relationship. Verity is our Omega, Woodrow is the Alpha that she ends up with. While Verity is definitely a Cinderella character, so many things about this don't align with the progression of the Cinderella story. She has a dad who's still alive, she has a terrible stepmom and stepsister, but they're eliminated from this story very, very quickly. She is awoken as an Omega and ends up living in this house. And Woodrow is a very powerful alpha in this world. He finds out about Verity. He decides that he needs to have her. So he blackmails the people working in this space to basically make him irresistible to her. It doesn't matter how. And then once they're connected, she goes and lives with him. Like I said, intimacy is pretty foundational to this kind of storytelling, so there's a lot of it. There's a lot of intimacy in this story, and it's got that Omegaverse flavor, so if it's not for you, don't worry about it. There's a lot about bodily fluids, there's a lot about biology, one person being, the perfect fit for the other. But in general, this was a good Omegaverse. If the paranormal aspect kind of weirds you out, I think the sci-fi aspect of this will definitely allow for some readers to more engage with this kind of storytelling. If those ingrained power dynamics bother you, there's an alpha, there's an omega, there's a hierarchy in general, and they follow those lines of the hierarchy. There is no fighting the system in this. So if that works for you, this is a good read. I enjoyed myself a lot. This is a quick read. It's a pretty short book, and there are a lot of books to go. If you're looking for something that will give you a lot of stories to start a series that will keep you going for a while, this is a good one. I messaged Nat immediately when I started and when I finished, and she and I had a great time talking about it. I know this book is also one of the episodes on their podcast, so if you want to hear someone go into a little bit more detail of what happens, you don't mind spoilers, go check out that episode. Oh my goodness, am I just in my kinky graphic novel phase? Because I think I am. And if so, give me your recommendations. I read Sex Criminals Volume 1. Oh my gosh, what caught me about this is quite literally the description, the synopsis of this story. Straight off the bat, Susie and John are FMC, MMC. We meet Susie, who, when she climaxes, freezes time. Cool, crazy. What? She then meets John, who has the same weird mystical power. Courtney said it best when she introduced me to this book. She said they are a couple of ding-dongs, and they are. These two are just a couple of ding-dongs, trudging their way through life as best as they can, very messily, very, very messily. This concept is so bizarre. The styling of this is also very different than Sunstone. It's much lighter. There are a lot of bright colors. There's this weird kind of magic element to it, and that's really interesting, or it was to me. I had so much fun reading this. This first volume really sets up their personalities, their dynamic, the styling of this story, and the conflict that I believe we're going to see. I haven't read the rest of the volume, so I'm not 100% sure. It feels low stakes to me, but if you're looking for a low stakes, kind of paranormal, sexy romp in the graphic novel world, this one was crazy. Because basically what these two decide to do is use the power that they have to freeze time to rob a bank. Multiple banks. So many banks. some really interesting conversations about how it's affected them and their relationship with sex and intimacy, especially other partners. John tells the story of, oh my gosh, I can't even say what he calls that, the quiet, as Susie would call it, but his is very much what you would expect from a teenage boy. He's not a teenage boy, but he tells the story of when he starts off. And something that was really interesting is how they tell the stories of their sexual awakening and discovering this power. What were they doing? What did they use this power for? How did it affect them and their relationships with future partners? And finally, how did it affect the relationship that they built with each other as two people who have this power and can freeze time and be in that freeze together? There is a really beautiful moment of them realizing they're not alone. They're together in this space and they can be together separate from everyone else. Before, this space has always been a solo adventure, and suddenly it's not. They can share that with their actual partner. I don't know how fast I'm gonna read through this because they are a couple of ding-dongs. I don't feel compelled to read the next one right away, but it's definitely on my radar for stories to come back to. I read Her Soul to Take by Harley Laroux. This is one of those books that keeps coming up for me as a great intro to dark romance. I kind of wish I'd found it back in December. I would have enjoyed it more. Honestly, this book doesn't cross my dark romance line of does a main character kidnap another main character. Is it dark? Is there a lot of morally gray going on? Absolutely. But for me, dark romance really hits the darkness when the relationship at the center, a couple or more, is dark, and that actually doesn't happen in this story. So this story takes place in this teeny tiny town. Raylan has returned to her hometown where she ends up meeting Leon, who is in fact a demon. He's a demon, and he falls for her, and he falls so fast, and he falls so hard. The bigger story involves a cult and a paranormal creature that people are worshiping as a god, and that's not important. It's not. The really important part is these two absolutely falling hard for each other, falling fast, and Leon realizing that he loves her and wants her, and the only way that he can think of to keep her is for her to give him her soul. Apparently that's just the demon way to do things. Demons are very territorial in this story. A lot of this is trying to convince Ray, her nickname, to give her soul to Leon so that they can be together. Things that I believe push this into the dark romance genre are certainly what's happening around. There's a lot of blood and gore, there's a lot of death, there are monsters, there's violence. But for the two of them, there's also some great light kink, there's a lot of play, there's really good consent. Leon doesn't want to play with someone who doesn't want to play, and that's something that he makes very clear. Both of them are queer in who they are intimate with. It was a really funny moment watching him just go, I've slept with dudes, but I don't really label myself. We don't have to. Everybody does these things. In terms of dark romance, like I said, this doesn't cross over to me. The actual relationship between Ray and Leon is really good. They communicate well, they progress in their relationship. It's very fast, it's very intense, and so the time that they need to take to get from point A to point B is understandable. I totally understand why Ray does not immediately give her soul to Leon, and how they do get together in the end. This is part of a trilogy. I believe it's about 3 different couples, so if you're looking for a standalone with a future storyline, this one is going to be for you. It's a pretty hefty book. So for me, the darkness comes in the violence of the world and the other concepts. Also, if you have a weird thing about demons, then there is some sacrilegious stuff that happens. But if that doesn't bother you, I think this is pretty light for dark romance. That was really good. Blah, 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 blah. Cop Down the Block was a really interesting friends to lovers sports situation. If you are someone who read Blindsided and went, I want more of that, I recommend Cock Down the Block. In fact, I think I liked it a little bit better. If for no other reason than there's less drama surrounding them than there was in Blindsided. Trixie and Chris have been friends since childhood. She moved away to college, she came back, and now lives next door to him. They've been next door neighbors for a number of years, I think at least 4. She is a librarian, he is the quarterback of the Denver Mustangs, and a big deal, obviously. They are best friends. There is an established relationship. She's not hidden. Chris has been in love with her since they were about 10 years old. Most of this story is Chris finally revealing his feelings and Trixie, I guess, developing feelings. This is where friends to lovers always weirds me out. If it's 2 people separately pining, I get it, but in this story, it really is Chris pining and Trixie realizing that, maybe allowing herself to have feelings for him for the first time. Yeah, that's a friends to lovers thing, and it's always been my issue with friends to lovers. This story is really about plus-sized women just owning it. Nothing about this story was her journey in self-acceptance as a plus-sized woman. She already had it. There are a lot of other people in this world who are plus-sized and loving themselves and empowering themselves. Trixie's mom was an intimate work, can I say that, before she was born. When we meet Trixie is a sex educator and speaker, so that was a really fun dynamic to watch, the 2 of them having these conversations about being plus sized, about intimacy, about relationships, about all of that. It was just super great. A+ mom. Additionally, there's a fake dating scenario, which I always find fun. Trixie basically asks Chris to be her date to her high school reunion for the Mean Girls, and they end up going on a number of dates to practice for the main event. This story sets up a series. Chris comes from a really big football playing family of mostly men and 1 daughter. I'm sure that it's gonna keep going. They seem like they could lend themselves to some nice romances. If you're looking for a plus-sized FMC where it's not about the FMC being plus-sized, this is it. There's no coming to terms with it. There's no really even discussion about her size in terms of her self-love or anything like that. This was a good story in terms of just sexual empowerment, talking about that and putting it out there for the world. I loved the care packages that Trixie's mom sent her. If you've read the story, they are phenomenal. If you haven't, they are phenomenal. While Trixie is inexperienced, she isn't uneducated. For me, that makes a really big difference. If you're not ready to move forward in intimacy with someone, you don't have to. I don't think that anyone should or shouldn't achieve certain levels of intimacy by any age whatsoever. What I did like is, she wasn't sheltered. It wasn't, oh my gosh, how do I know my own body? I didn't know it could do that. It didn't feel like that. It felt like someone finally meeting a person that they were ready to be intimate with. And that's really important. It is perfectly all right to wait for someone to be intimate with and for you to educate yourself about intimacy before you reach that point. So A+ on that. I've got it for you. The Unlikely Heir is going to be a great book for anyone who has read Red, White, and Royal Blue, but wants something else. Wants something in that genre that also has princes. Callum and Oliver are our 2 MMCs. Callum was 11th in line to the throne. He was the son of the 4th prince of the queen. Totally separate names and everything. I do love that they are separating themselves, copyright and all that. Everyone above him gets embroiled in this scandal of extortion, and so he suddenly becomes next in line, 11th to 1st. He has been living in obscurity in California. He's a bit of an awkward human. We meet him on a terrible first date. It is going so badly for him. You just feel for that poor man. He is thrust into this world of British royalty. His parents divorced when he was so young that he was able to escape that upbringing. Also means that he feels so behind the learning curve of what does it mean to be the heir to the British throne. He is American. He was raised in California. He sounds American. He doesn't look like his daddy, looks like his mom, who is also deceased in the story. Oliver is the prime minister of the UK. He is out, he is divorced from his husband, so that in terms of his sexuality, it's not a bit of a scandal. Callum and Oliver meet as one does in this situation, new heir to the throne, current prime minister, and it starts off as friends. Oliver can see that Callum is clearly overwhelmed by the situation and offers him his personal number. Now, the impulse to offer that one-on-one assistance is unexpected from Oliver. He doesn't understand why he felt compelled to help this kid, but he does. And in doing so, they start this really adorable friendship of texting, of checking in. There's a game of who made the worst headline, which I think is very funny in this day and age. Their chemistry evolves. Oliver is really thrown by his connection with Callum because he was married, he had a husband that crashed and burned. Callum goes through almost no real reckoning about his sexuality. He says, I assumed I was straight, but looking back, I guess I had crushes on my male friends, and that's why I was kind of awkward. I'm okay with this. And I'm not saying anybody has to have a big revelation about their sexuality, but it felt glossed over in this situation. Given that the relationship between the two is definitely a bigger deal, maybe, or felt more high stakes than I am in my sexuality. Here's my sexuality, but I'm in love with this person. They start a secret relationship that, of course, everybody around them knows and finds out about. This push and pull of, what does it mean for us to be in a relationship? How does this affect us in our life, in our wants and needs? The monarchy in the UK is supposed to be politically neutral, so dating or marrying or being in a relationship with someone so involved in the politics of the UK can be seen as messy. And with how his family's stuff gone down, they do not want any more messy. Oliver is also in this hard situation of, what do I do with this prince? I'm now involved in the monarchy. What is it going to mean when he becomes king? What happens next? And there are other foreseen circumstances. Poor Callum, his family is really, truly terrible. Grandma's amazing. Grandma Kate's amazing. The rest of them, really, they can shove it. Their intimacy is not well documented. While they certainly are, there aren't a lot of descriptions. It's more closed door than that, which is fine. I really enjoyed watching the two of them go in this back and forth of, what do I want? Because Callum has to decide, does he want to be the next heir? Should he abdicate? He has two half siblings who at the very least grew up in the UK. And Oliver has to say, now that I'm really experiencing this connection, this love, this passion, what is it worth to me? What am I willing to give up and do in order to have this in my life? I inhaled this book. I loved it. Go have some good old-fashioned princely fun. Everything that I could have wanted in a spicy holiday novella was in this story. This is the holiday spicy novella I've been waiting for. It is Trick Shot by Kayla Gross. Like mic drop. There is holiday. There is spice. There is kink. MMF. Yes. My favorite version of that. I inhaled this like it was, what is a Christmas thing that people inhale? Like Santa inhales cookies. So it is Christmas Eve and we find Leo, who is the twin brother of hockey superstar Lucas, alone at a bar in an airport with his flight delayed, and then canceled, where he then meets Riley, who is supposed to be on the flight with him, and she mistakes him for Lucas. And in the, I don't want to deal with the, I'm the twin brother, nobody thinks is good enough shenanigans, he just goes along with it and lets Riley think he's Lucas. They start to banter and he realizes, she's great, I like her, I want to bring her home to my best friend Jace, who I also have sex with. Yes, we share the same name, not the same spelling, but we share the same name. Isn't that fun? Jace comes and picks them up and they all go back to the apartment where the sexual tension climbs and then is explored so well. They have this insanely explosive night together where there are many combinations in many different ways, and Riley just lets loose, lets her freak flag fly for the first time, absolutely is into it, is up for it, feels safe, they communicate well, they share what's going to happen really well, they ask for consent, there are lots of check-ins amongst the three of them. Leo and Jace have this multi-year history. They've known each other for 10 years. They've been buddies, as they would say it, for about half that time, I think. Probably about half that time. So there is an established understanding and relationship there. And Riley just fits so well with the two of them. If you read The Perfect Fit by Sadie Kincaid, but you wanted less dark and creepy and fewer participants, enjoy this. Now, the next morning, after some more fooling around, when Riley discovers that Leo is not, in fact, his twin hockey playing brother, she leaves and goes to her family. And they pursue her. And it's all good in the end. It is a novella. It is fairly short. It is low stakes in terms of drama around them. But it is so high spice. If you are looking for just, I need a book that is going to spice. It's not immediate spice, but I want a book that's going to spice and then spice and then spice and then spice. Enjoy. This book also contains a lot of really good practices around intimacy, around groups, around communication. There's a lot of prep work. There's a lot of lube. There's a contraception talk. I had a blast with this one. I didn't even know that I needed it, but now that I've read it, I want some more. Please, Kayla, I want some more. What should I read next?